Today we are working on page 121. We'll be doing problems 1 through 16. We are working with percents greater than 100% and percents less than 1%. In problems 1 through 4, we are asked to write each percent as a decimal and as a mixed number or fraction, always in simplest form. So let's start off with 350%. And so to change from a percent to a decimal, what we do is we drop the percent sign and then we move the decimal 2 places to the left. So when we have 350%, so first we'll drop that percent sign and then move our decimal 2 places left. So that'll be 3.5 for our first answer. And let's talk about why we do that. We'll talk about why we do that just with number 1, and then we'll apply it for the rest of them. The reason why we drop the percent sign and move our decimal 2 places to the left is because of this. Because 350% really means 350. Now, percent means per 100. Cent means 100, like 100 cents in a dollar, 100 years in a century, 100 centimeters in a meter. So per cent means per 100. Per means divide. So 350% means 350 divided by 100. 350 divided by 100. So when we have 350 divided by 100, now we no longer have the percent sign, obviously, because we changed it into a division problem, divide by 100 per 100. And to divide by 100, we move our decimal 2 places to the left. So that's why it's 3.5. So instead of doing this little work in between each time, we just know we drop the percent sign and move our decimal 2 places left. But if we ever forget that, because it's an easy one to forget if you don't use it frequently, we can always go back to the per 100, and we know that means divide by 100. And then we also need to write that as a fraction in simplest form. So that's easy to do from our decimal. When we read our decimal correctly using our place value vocabulary, we read this as 3 and 5 tenths. 3, then we pronounce the decimals, and that's a 5 in the tenths place, so 3 and 5 tenths. So when I write that as a fraction, mixed number, I write it as 3 and 5 tenths, and we always simplify. So this will simplify to 3 and 1/2. So that's our second answer, fraction in simplest form, 3 and 1/2. I'm going to make that 3 a little neater. Number 2, write each, write it as a decimal and as a mixed number or fraction in simplest form. Okay, so to write this as a decimal, we're going to drop our percent sign and move our decimal 2 places to the left. So that's just going to give us the number 6. And then 6 as a fraction in simplest form. Well, we could write it as 6 over 1, but that's not in simplest form. We would still write this also just as 6. Moving on to number 3, we have 15 hundredths of a percent. So that's much smaller than 1%. So this is a percent less than 1%. Okay, so again, we're going to drop that percent sign and move our decimal 2 places to the left. So our decimal is here right now before the 1. So if I move it 2 more places left and I fill in these spaces with 0, we get 0.0015. So that's 15, and that 5 is in the, let's use our correct vocabulary, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths. So this decimal is pronounced as 15 10,000ths. So when I want to write that as a, and that's, we need to know those place value names, because that's how we know how to write it as a fraction. So those decimal place value names, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths, 100 thousandths, are important because they help us to know how to convert from a decimal to a fraction. So again, when I read this, I read it as 15 because that's the number that I have. And then the 5, the last digit in the number, is in the tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000. So I write it as a fraction as 15 10,000ths. Okay, and then I know GCF from our previous studies. I know that the greatest common factor of 15 and 10,000 is 5. They're both divisible by 5. So when I divide the numerator by 5 15 divided by 5 is 3. I divide the denominator by 5. 10,000 divided by 5. Well, 10 divided by 5 is 2. So 10,000 divided by 5 is 2,000. So my answer is 3 2,000ths. Okay. And then I want to check for divisibility to see if I can simplify that further, because what if I didn't have the GCF? What if there was a larger number? So my divisibility rule for 3 is if you add up the digits of the number, 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 2. If that sum is divisible by 3, then the whole number is divisible by 3. 2,000, 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 has a sum of 2. 2 is not divisible by 3, so therefore 2,000 is not divisible by 3, so this is already simplified. So our second part of our answer is 3 2,000ths. Okay. Number 4, we have 55 hundredths of a percent, so approximately 1/2 of 1%. Okay, so to write that as a decimal, we'll drop the percent sign, move our decimal 2 places to the left, and we'll put a 0 in that empty spot. So we get 0.0055. So this is 55, because that's the number that I have, and that last 5 is in the tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths place. So this is 55 10,000. So as a decimal, is the first part of our answer I forgot to write down is 0.0055, 55 10,000ths. And then I look at 55 and 10,000. Those are both divisible by 5. Okay, so I can simplify my fraction. Numerator divided by 5, denominator divided by 5. 55 divided by 5 is 11. Okay, 10,000 is also divisible by 5. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So 10,000 divided by 2, or excuse me, so 10,000 divided by 5 is 2,000. So 11 2,000ths, and 2,000 is not divisible by 11. So the second part of our answer is 11 2,000ths. Okay. Okay, moving on to 5 through 8. Write each mixed number as a percent. So 2.5. So I know that the 2, the whole, is 200%. So I'll just make that note over here for myself, 200%. And I'm going to add that fractional part. 1/2, I know this when I have this one memorized, and I'm sure that you do too. Half is the same as 50%. So we have 200% plus 50%, which is 250%. Okay, now that one we could really do with mental math. We had minimal work to do there. But if you did not, we'll do some more without the mental math so you can see other ways to do it. Some of you might be able to do this one in your head too. You know that 3/4, right? So think of 3/4 of a dollar, that's 75 cents, 3/4, 75 cents, right? So that as a decimal is 0.75. So this as a decimal would be 9.75. So as a percent, we would move our decimal 2 places to the right and add the percent sign, 975%. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that with, so you can probably do that with mental math, 975%, but let's go ahead and work out the steps instead of just talking through it. So the 9 is obviously going to be 900% because it's a whole number. 1 is 100%, so 9 is 900%. So here we have 3/4. If I want to write that as a decimal, so I'm going to scale that 3/4, okay, up to hundredths because we want to have a percent. So what is that as a percent? Because we want it per 100, so per 100. So that's the reason I made my denominator 100, because my directions told me to make it a per 100%. So how do I get from 4 to 100 in my denominator? Times 25. So then what do I need to do my numerator? The same thing, times 25. So it's 75 hundredths. So 900% and 75% is 975%. So this is 75%. That's 900%. So 975% to get all together. Okay, so 4 and 1/5. Okay, this is going to be, so if you can do 1/5 and change that to hundredths. Okay, we're multiplying, we're scaling up times 20, scaling up times 20. that's 20 per 100 or 20%. We know that 4 wholes is 400%. So 400% plus 20% is 420%. Okay. Okay, so we know the 7 is going to be 700%, so we'll put the 7 there. We know that 3/10 can be scaled up to 100 by multiplying by 10. So whatever I do to my denominator, I also do to my numerator times 10, and I get 30. So 3/10 is the same as 30 hundredths. 30 hundredths is the same as 30%. So we have 700% here for the 7 wholes, and then 3/10 is 30%, so 730%. And when you make your percent sign, notice that the diagonal goes the same way that the diagonal on the number 7 does. Okay, top right to bottom left. So if you ever forget, just know that it's going to be pretty much parallel to the number 7 when you make your percent sign. Okay, numbers 9 through 12. Write each decimal as a percent. So again, per 100. Okay, so this is 8 and 5/10. We want to scale that up to a percent. So to percent is per 100. So we're actually dividing. So if I divide by adding that percent sign, it's the same as dividing by 100. So I need to multiply by 100 in my number or move my decimal 2 places to the right. And what's going to go in that empty space is a 0. So 850%. So 8.5 is the same thing as 850%. Okay, 2.64, 2 and 64 hundredths. Okay, is the same thing as, so I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the right, 264, and then percent is per 100. So 264%. Okay, and if that's confusing to you, here's a little, I'll just do kind of a little additional explanation right here under that little line. So we have 2.64, which we read as 2 and 64 hundredths. So if you think of it as a fraction, if you do this little intermediate step, here it is worked out for you. 2 and 64 hundredths. So 2 as a percentage is 200%. And then 64 hundredths as a percent is 64%. So that is altogether 264%. So that's just another way to think of it. 11, we have 9 in the 10th, hundredths, thousandths place. So that's 9 thousandths. Okay, so to make that into a percent, we're going to move our decimal 2 places to the right and then add the percent sign. So this is going to be 0 and 9/10 of a percent. Okay, because remember, percent means divide by 100. If I want to change this number's format from a decimal to a percent, but I don't want to change the value. So really what we've effectively done is the percent means divide by 100. So what we had to do, you can't just go around dividing things by 100. If you divide it by 100, percent means divide by 100. Then you have to multiply by 100 somewhere else to balance it out. That's why we move this 2 places to the right, because we multiplied by 100 here. Then we divide by 100, which is what per 100 means, divide by 100. So that's how they're equivalent. Okay, decimal equivalent to this percentage. Number 12. Okay, we'll do the same thing. We'll multiply. So I'll write it here just so it's not so sloppy in the top line so we can still see our original. So we'll multiply by 100 by moving our decimal 2 places to the right. Okay, so that's now 0.34. And if I multiplied by 100, I have to balance that out by dividing by 100, which is what percent means. So this answer is 34 hundredths of a percent. So that's less than 1%. And if you ever aren't sure, remember 1%, just for reference, 1% means 1 out of 100, okay? 1/100th, which as a decimal is 0.01, okay? Or if you think of it like money, it's 1 cent. Is this less than 1 cent? Yes. So then it'll be less than 1% when you write it as a percent. Number 13. We'll do some application problems now. 13. The size of a large milkshake is 1.4 times the size of a medium milkshake. Write 1.4 as a percent. Okay, so 1 and 4/10, and I want to write that as a percent. You can do that fraction intermediate step if you'd like to see it scaled up to hundredths, or you can just move your decimal 2 places to the right and add the percent sign. So it's 140%. Okay, and for kids who like that fraction, you'd like to see it out of 100, I'm going to do that one more time with adding in that middle step just to make it super obvious. So 1.4, 1 and 4/10 is the same as 1 and 4/10, right? I'm going to write that 1 as 100%. Okay, and then 4/10 is the same thing as 40 hundredths. So that's plus 40 hundredths is 40%. So 100% plus 40% is 140%. So that's just an extra step. Most of you probably don't want or need that, but there it is for those of you who like to see the why and the worked out details. Number 14. Fresh water from lakes accounts for only, this is tenths, hundredths, thousands. So 1/1000th of the world's water supply. Write this decimal as a percent. So to change it to a percent, so our original number is 1,000th. To change it to a percent, we multiply by 100 by moving our decimal 2 places to the right, divide by 100 by adding the percent sign. Okay, so it's going to be 0.1% or 1/10 of 1%. So we have groundwater, we have the frozen snow, we have ice caps, we have glaciers, lots of other forms of fresh water other than just lakes. Humidity in the air, clouds. Number 15. In a recent year, the United States Census Bureau reported that 0.3% of the population of the United States was Japanese. Write this percent as a decimal and as a fraction. So write it as a decimal and as a fraction, okay? And then we'll interpret its meaning as a ratio of the United States population. So it's a small portion, okay? 0.3%. So let's write it as a decimal. So 0.3%, okay? We want to write it as a decimal. This means divide by 100. Remember, percent means divide by 100. So if I drop the percent sign, okay, I'm gonna per 100, I need to actually divide that out. Move my decimal here. So as a decimal, that's going to be 0.003 as a decimal. Okay, and then when I read this, this is 3 in the tenths, hundredths, thousandths place, thousandths. So this is 3/1000. And then I want to interpret that. That means 3 out of every 1,000 people in the US is Japanese. So 3 out of every 1,000 people in the US was Japanese, and according to this census, whatever year it was taken. Okay. Number 16. Adrienne answered all 21 multiple choice questions correctly on her science test. If her teacher decided to let one of the questions count as a bonus, worth the same number of points as the other problems on the test, what was Adrienne's score? So now really what that means is she got 21 points out of, or excuse me, 21 questions out of 20, because the teacher is counting one of those as a bonus. So if each point is the same number of points, we'd have 21 out of 20, and we want to write that as a percent, okay? So we can divide it out using long division, right? We can do 21 divided by 20, or we can notice that, and that would give us the percent. We can notice that 20 can go into 100 very easily by multiplying by 5. So 20 times 100, or 20 times 5 gives us 100. And then we do the same thing here. times 5. So 21 times 5 is 105. So she got 105 out of 100, which is 105%. Okay, and then we wanted it as a decimal and a percent. They asked us to write that as a decimal and a percent. So 105% is the same thing as 1.05. Remember, we dropped the percent sign per 100. So if I drop the divide by 100, I have to do that action. So divide by 100. Okay. All right, and that was chapter 2, lesson 4, page 121, percents greater than 100% and percents less than 1%.